Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're watching The Late Show on Newcastle Fast FM. Welcome to tonight's show. It's the continuation from last night's show on the topic of white supremacist extremism. And we are joined tonight again with our co-host Jamal Richards. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi. Looking forward to this conclusion and continuation of this topic. It was really good and juicy last night, mashallah.
we had some good points last night, good discussions, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
We also have our special guest, our brother and teacher Abdul Haq Kufi Al Ashanti. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing, Abdul Haq?
Alhamdulillah.
You good?
Yes.
Are you ready for tonight's program?
Yeah, I'm ready for tonight.
All right, good. Let's get straight into it then, yeah? So, as for those of you who've just tuned in, let me give you a quick introduction on our guest, Abdul Haq Kufi. He is an academic. He's a revert to Islam. He studied Islam and Arabic in various places. He is the author of a book called Defining Legends, which we're going to spend a whole weekend talking about in a couple of weekends' time, inshallah. He's published many books and articles on his website, salafimanhaj.com. He's done a lot of research on Afrocentric writings and Islam and things like that. So there's a lot of linkages in what we talked about last night and what we're going to talk about tonight. So Abdullah, give us a quick summary and reminder of what last night's show was about. What did we cover in last night's show? Just to give an overview.
So yesterday we discussed about what white supremacy is, and we looked at where it started. I think today what we can maybe hone that down a bit, because yesterday we kind of looked at I think some of your interventions and suggestions. I think you were discussing like you could say white superiority, but as kind of an implied, subtly implied approach to it, which was used by various nations in the past. Even though it wasn't pronounced as such, it was definitely implied in their actions. So that was a bit of a distinction between what you was mentioning. That was very relevant, and we'll look at that again today. But so you looked at it from that perspective, and also I was looking at the perspective of the ideological background of where it has shaped in the modern contemporary time, particularly over the last 15 years. So that was the kind of the overview. We also discussed some examples from history, with regards to how it's manifested, and we looked at how the repercussions of it today in the modern world and what that can lead to. And essentially, we also mentioned that how it has led to, an extreme emphasis on it, has led to and culminated in terrorism and violence in various parts of the world.
Okay, well, let's drill down on it. So yesterday we looked at it, or I looked at it from the point of white superiority, and we looked at the historical context of that. Let's drill down a bit more today then. Let's talk about white supremacism. Yeah, let's, over the last 50 years, discuss that, because I've heard statements like, well, we're living right now in a white supremacist global agenda. I've heard statements like that being made. Yeah, let's drill down and explain some of these things and explore this now. Break it down for us, inshallah.
Well, when we're looking at the ideology of how it's manifested of late, there are different themes to it. You see what I'm saying? So I think this is important to look at. What are the themes of white supremacism today? If we're looking at it in how it's manifested in terms of, I think we should be interested in terms of how it's manifested in the extreme sense and how it's led to terrorism and violence. I think this is the key, what we should be looking at first. Or what you mentioned before, that we're living in a white supremacist, there's a white supremacist worldview. That's a bit, that's I think it fits into kind of what you were saying yesterday about this kind of implied as emphasis on it, and the things that you were saying about what we discussed yesterday with regards to the doctors looking at viewing Africa as a mere laboratory wherein they can. That's sort of like when we're looking at it from that sense. But when we're honing it down then we have to let's look at some of the core themes, which we kind of brushed upon yesterday. But
Okay.
the main core theme, I would say, is the one which is so common. I've seen it so much, which is this notion that there's an invasion, a migration invasion. That's the first core theme.
Yeah, we touched upon that yesterday.
That
That
the
there's a
countries being
migrant invasion, in particular Muslim invasion of Europe.
yeah, but
And
yes.
there was,
So this is important. So when they say like there's an invasion, this first of all, this is where but the people who hold this, we need to there has to be very um, as what happened in our case and then for the Muslim community when we had to deal with these narratives head on. This harmful theme also has to be tackled head on. There is no invasion. There's no organized invasion. If there was an invasion, they would be seeing the control of the media, control of the state apparatus, control of the military, control of all of these institutions. If that has happened, yes, you could say it's an invasion. If that hasn't happened, there's no invasion, and it's just a person's own paranoid and excessive ideas going wild.
or you would see,
There is
or
no.
you would see an army,
That's
literally
the
an
definition of
army
an invasion.
coming to Europe. I think there's some sort of linkage here in terms of when you talk about ideology, when you talk about when you do readings in history. I think there's a perverse understanding or revisionist understanding of history of the way in which the Ottomans came up to the gates of Vienna, for example. These are things that come to mind when you talk about an invasion, right? There's an organized army coming through Europe, marching through Europe, and literally taking over countries, right?
Forgive me if I'm wrong here, AT and Abdul Haq, but could we not say there's a difference between racism and white supremacism? Because I don't think a white supremacist is going to be, actually maybe I could be wrong, but white supremacists are going to be less likely to be worried about the an invasion of migrants as regards a racist. I mean, could there be cast a difference between the two, or is it exactly the same part and parcel? Because I think like white supremacists may be regarded as someone having more power, whereas a racist is just someone who just has like an opinion against another race. I mean, maybe you could clarify a bit more for me. You don't need to freeze everybody.
From what I've researched, that's one of the core themes.
Yeah. So there's no differentiation, it's just the same.
Yeah, I would say that it's the same. It's a theme anyway. But we'll explore this as we go throughout tonight. But from in terms of it being a theme, is this theme something which comes up within the modern white supremacist narrative, especially with the white supremacy which leads to terrorism? This is a theme that we're being invaded, we're being overrun, hence we need to defend the borders. And then next thing, what does that mean? Next thing, then you have to pick up arms. Next thing, you immediately have to get a weapon. Next thing, because you need to fight back. So that's a theme. You see what I'm saying? Of this narrative, the theme is that there's been an invasion. This is common. There's been an invasion, and hence the indigenous people of this is the stuff I've seen. The indigenous people of the country of Europe, indigenous people, and need to fight back to resist. It's the global elites who have allowed this. It's George Soros who has allowed this. It's this so and so have allowed this. Hence, we need to fight back against this invasion. So this is dangerous idea.
It's very dangerous, and I'll tell you why it's dangerous. Because just to answer Jamal's question, in my view, Jamal, the two are intertwined. They overlap. White superiority and racism. There's definitely linkages between the two. That's for sure. If not, it's an interchangeable term, right?
Yeah.
But the what Abdul Haq's just mentioned there about it's dangerous to come up with these themes that the indigenous people have to fight back. And this idea that if there's what do you think of it as an invasion? Somebody's coming to take what's rightfully yours. Right, that's what you think of as an invasion. So you have the right to take arms and fight back to defend yourself, and so on and so forth. Now, this is not something new, because even up here in the north, in South Shields, which has probably one of the oldest Muslim communities in the UK, from the Yemeni communities who came over in the mid to late 1800s. when they came and settled as a community, they set up coffee houses, masajid. They married here, settled here, had children here. We're talking the mid to late 1800s. It's not something that is a new phenomenon. But in the early 1900s, now listen to this, there was literally riots in the streets of South Shields because the indigenous people were saying, "Oh, look, they've come and taken our jobs." These were part of the British Empire. They were part of the cargo ships from Aden who had come working for the British and docked on the port of Tyne, right? And when they came, they were like they wanted to establish themselves as a community, live here. And what was the result of that? The local indigenous people said, "Oh, look, they're taking our women, they're taking our jobs, they're taking over our town," right? And what happened? They called it the South Shields riots. Yeah, these black people, the Yemeni, these black people have come, and it was reported in the newspapers, 1916 or something like that. I can't remember the exact date, but early 1900s certainly. They were the locals were fighting back, over this invasion, and it's a recurring theme. We see and hear this a lot of times. Even with the Jewish community in the 1920s and 30s, same sort of rhetoric, right? You hear this cycle going round and round. So it's not something that is new, that's for sure.
Because what
be dangerous.
Yeah. What's so that's why I said this whole notion of the indigenous community, because this is something we've heard the BNP regurgitate over the last 20 years. They were actually key in this in terms of that notion. Oh, we are the indigenous. Because what they did, some of the white supremacist racist groups, is that the KKK in America did it as well. So what they did is that they imbibed aspects of the civil rights language. So the indigenous peoples, self-determination. So which for Islamically, there's nothing wrong if someone's white and they're European. Nothing wrong with that. They should be proud of what they were born in. You see what I'm saying? That's their background. Someone's blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the person like that. So Allah says in the Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافَ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And from his signs is that he created your different languages and your colors, and indeed in that are signs for the worlds. So all of this is shows that Allah's beauty in creation and diversity in creation. That he made some of us black, brown, and white. So there's nothing wrong with that. Just so someone should be happy with that. You see what I'm saying? So just like so that should be clearly mentioned. If that should be clearly mentioned. The problem is what we're talking about is how it's leading to simplistic, false narratives, which is then tiptoeing into terrorism and extremism. This is the problem. And what Abu Tayyib mentioned is that some of why it's become popular among the working class, some of the poor white communities, because they feel disaffected. They feel marginalized by you could say the upper and higher classes who may have facilitated these things. According to them, they facilitated it. We wasn't asked. This is common. I've heard this a lot. We wasn't asked for all of these people to go, even though they neglect the fact that many people were not asked before their countries were overrun.
I think that's what,
that's that's the case in point. There's not.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because with my question as well, is between, I think that's what it was, is between the classes, and I think that kind of cleared it up a little bit for me as well.
Yeah, I'm going to share. Share a little clip with you guys.
There's a class basis.
Yeah,
and maybe Sahil can put it up on the comment and also the link on the Facebook thing about the first serious sort of street violence and racial unrest in 1919. It was 1919, not 1916, guys, between the foreign seamen from and the local indigenous people, with the fighting that took place ensued there. And it was again this idea that we touched upon it yesterday as well, and it's mentioned here as well, that the fighting between the racial unrest, the blame that went on to the Arab and Somali seamen that came and docked in the port of Tyne, and that led to the first serious street violence and the race riots, as they called it, right? And because of this program, and remember, there is definitely a class element to this, because they were all working class people, right? So they've always been used in this situation for bringing about racism and race violence.
Yeah, the same would have happened maybe in the history of Bristol, Liverpool, Sheffield,
Yes.
and then up in as you're saying, up to, towards the northeast. So definitely that would have occurred. There would have been. See, this is where you could say the interests of the empire do not necessarily tally with the interests of the local poor people. You see what I'm saying? Who may live within the empire. If there's an interesting scene in there. There's the film, isn't there? Albert and Victoria. No, so Abdul and Victoria. Victoria and Abdul.
Yes.
Which is about Queen Victoria and one of the Munshi. Yeah, Munshi was like one of the servants. And there's an interesting bit in the dramatization of it where when Abdul and his the other servant who's with him from India, I think
Yeah, I
his name's
remember.
Mohammed,
I can't remember his name.
when they when they dock and they land into London and they got off the ship, the British guys who were with them went, "Ah, yes, civilization." And then when they're looking around, there's like all of these poor people begging, like on the streets off the dock. But I think what that tries to say, you see what I'm saying? What it's trying to get through is that well, see, in the mind of the elite British imperial mentality, it is civilization. But where's that trickling down necessarily to the poor person on the road? You see what I'm saying? This is where there's been a disparity, and this is where.
But that's always been like that, though. If you think about it, I mean, even now today, the war of the politicians' war is very different to what the local indigenous people want. Right? More than 1 million people came out against the war in Iraq when Tony Blair was in power. Right? And many, many more were against it. So there's always been that disparity between the ruling elite and what the people actually want on the ground. You know, who are these soldiers fighting for, and what are they fighting for? Is it really for their own freedoms and for their own benefit? There's always going to be that disparity, in my view. But you know, just on that thing about Victoria and Abdul,
one thing's for sure is that the black and brown peoples, they're the ones who get. Sorry, but what I was saying is that one thing is for sure is that the black and brown peoples, whichever one who's they're always in the middle of it. They're always getting the worst end of the stick.
Caught in the middle of it, of course. But you know, even in that movie, Victoria and Abdul, way that they made it out to be.
Yeah, where from the upper class, there's all from the.
There is, there's always going to be that disparity. But you know, there is. Do you think there's enough to suggest that Victoria may have took her shahada? Because at the end of that program, she specifically asked for the munshi for Abdul to come and kicked out the rest of her family, and then there was a private moment between them. Do you think she could have taken a shahada at that point? I don't know. It's left left quite open, isn't it? And that would have been an interesting turn of events if Queen Victoria did become Muslim towards the end of her life.
Do you know what, AT? I'll be honest with you. For the how close that she was with him, I think that you have people that have a little bit of both when it comes to faiths, where they have they adopt a bit of Islam. So I would not be surprised if she took a shahada, not at all.
Me neither.
Probably still would have held on to other beliefs as well, though. So there would be a little bit of a conflict there, perhaps.
But imagine that was publicized, and then the royal family became Muslim.
Yeah. That actually leads us on to.
What's that, Abdul Haq?
Yeah, I think that actually leads us on to a good point with regards to all of this, what we're discussing, which is the intercommunication between the Muslim realm and the non-Muslim realm, which is very much underplayed. What you just
Mm.
touched on in the whole issue of Queen Victoria
Mm.
and the Munshi Abdul, because in the 17th century, um, in the 17th century,
I think we've lost him.
can you hear me still? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I think we've lost you. So,
Oh,
Johnny, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa
Welcome to the
rahmatullahi
show,
wa
bro.
barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, Johnny.
Walaikum assalam, Jamal bhai. How are you?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah. Good to see you, bro.
Alhamdulillah. Good to see you too, because I especially woke up for 80. He said I must join the show, so I have to.
We
He
need to
called me out, bro.
we need to de-radicalize or de-inferiorize Johnny.
Bro, not in live show, bro. Not in live show, bro.
Abdul
Tell
Haq,
me,
you're
bro.
back, yeah?
Yeah. So what I was saying is that it's interesting because it shows the intercommunication that there was between the Muslim realm and Europe. This is key. This is something which is not discussed much, especially in the mainstream, because it's quite a bit of a niche area. But what we're discussing, but what the whole case with Queen Victoria and the
Oh no.
Looks like we've lost him again.
Is the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I think we've lost him again. So Jamal, that's quite interesting. Did you watch that movie, Victoria and Abdul?
I didn't watch it actually, bro, but I actually will watch it. But
Bro, it's worth watching, yeah?
yeah, but I understand the relationship between her and him and how close they were and how much she relied and confided in him. And, you know, there would have been untold amounts of questions she would have had about his faith. How do you deal with certain issues? He probably was a secret advisor. You know, this is without me saying
He ended up becoming her teacher. That's how she looked at him.
yeah.
He's
Is
like
it authentic
teacher.
though? Is it authentic story though?
It's based upon the notes that they found from him after his death and her, where because she learned Urdu and she wrote a lot of stuff in Urdu. All the English stuff they burnt, but the Urdu stuff they kept because they didn't know what was in it. So when it was in her hand, written in her hand, when it was translated, this is where they got a lot of the research from for this movie.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah, I
actually
would
came
be
to
surprised.
present her a gift from India because obviously she was the empress of India. But during the Indian occupation or the British colonialism, and he was somebody who was sent in order to bring this gift, and he ended up staying there on her request.
Right.
Because he had such a profound effect on her in terms of his mannerisms, the way he was a practicing Muslim as well. The way that he was teaching, the way that he dealt with her, and he really won her over from what it looks like. And she had a very, very close relationship with him.
So is the
Not
character
like
that
a
owned the
sexual
heart?
relationship, but it was more like a mother and son relationship. Is what it sounded like. But
Yeah.
definitely, she was close to him. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Have we spoken about Malcolm X so far?
Not
With
yet.
this
We're going to
issue?
come to that, inshallah. Not yet. We're waiting for Abdul Haq to return. Hopefully, he's
Right.
back soon. But the point is that, even talking from yesterday, and this is actually linked to it, right? Imagine the outrage that would have been. Let's say Queen Victoria did become Muslim, for argument's sake, yeah, or other members of the royal family. They would have been boycotted. It wouldn't have been accepted, and it would have been seen as inferior, right, to their civilized religion and way of life. Because of course the British Empire went around and Christianized the much of the world, right? So it would have been seen. It fits in quite well with this white supremacism aspect, because why is it such a problem that someone from the elite would become Muslim? Why would that be a problem? It's a religion that came from the same region as Christianity originated from. Essentially, Christianity is not an Anglo-Saxon religion. It's not an English religion, right? It's something that was adopted from the same region, the Middle East.
Yeah.
So why would it be such an outrage that they became Muslim or they would come? It's linked to this inferiority complex or superiority complex in this case, and this white supremacism that we have a certain culture and we're civilized, and all these other black and brown people, they are inferior or they are uncivilized and savage. So of course we can't adopt their way of life or their religion. And this is where, again, there's linkages between that, because essentially the people here were pagan. before Christianity came here. So if Christianity became accepted as a national religion, why wouldn't Islam be accepted as a national religion? There's no reason for it not to be, because the other one was adopted just as this one would be adopted. So this is the problem, because when you've, and this is my personal view, when you've colonized and enslaved a group of people of that particular religion, then it becomes a lot more difficult to swallow to say, yeah, I'm going to accept that religion of the people that we've enslaved, right? It's like taking a step back in some people's views. Do you see the point I'm making? So I think that's one of the reasons why it's always going to be a bit more difficult for people to accept.
Yeah.
And that rejection of something alien. But yeah, so Abdul Haq, you back, yeah?
But yeah, I mean, it's more problematic when you consider in English history the intercommunication between Islam and Europe. So, out in England, even like with King Offa, and he minted his famous coin, which he minted, which has the Shahada on it. You see what I'm saying? That's English history.
Yes.
That's English culture and heritage.
Yeah.
There. But it's not something which is really.
We never had an understanding of that. We never had an explanation to why he did that, did we? It's not recorded. It's just on the coin, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, some people say that most historians say it's mostly maybe done due to for commerce, commercial and enterprise reasons that he did that, and also it's kind of like to show that you. I mean, that would have been a very vogue thing to do at that time, wouldn't it? To sort of show that you were sort of in touch with that part of the world. You see what I'm saying? Especially when they were at the peak of civilization knowledge, you would want to kind of sort of show that you can sort of keeping up with the Joneses, wouldn't you? Hence, you were going to do something to show that your familiarity with what's going on in the Muslim realm. So it's probably something that it was done for commercial reasons. But that's something as well. That's not emphasized much, is it? By your local English nationalist fanatic. They don't mention that, do they? They don't mention maybe in the 17th century. One of the Moroccan ambassadors for the Saadi dynasty of Morocco, which his name was Abdul Wahid bin Masoud An-Noon. He was living in London, invited over to London, the ambassador to Morocco in the 17th century. And he was having regular meetings with Queen Elizabeth I. And his plan was to try to get Britain to support Morocco at the time to invade Spain, because he was aware of obviously the English defeated the Spanish Armada. There was tensions between England and Britain and Spain at the time, and he then the Moroccans at that time were trying to consider where there could be further cooperation with Great Britain, leading to a full-scale invasion of Spain itself. This was discussed. He was here. He was Abdul Wahid bin Masoud An-Noon. He was the Moroccan ambassador to Britain at the time.
There's a comment here. There's a comment here, if you can put it on, about King Offa's urban myth.
I was just about to jump in. This is our brother Dawood.
Luka Dawood.
This will get Adnan Rashid boiling in his. he says the coin. What's it? King Offa is an urban myth. The coins were forgeries. Dawood, are you sure about that? Because I think Adnan's gonna come after you, bro. That's like. Yeah.
I'm not sure how true that is.
He's got a source there.
Fake news, it says here, but yeah, I would love to get Adnan's perspective.
I'm pretty sure Adnan's got a coin, hasn't he?
He's got one. Yeah, he's got one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he has a coin. One of those coins.
That, of course, they're gonna say it's fake because they don't want to accept the fact that it's got the Shahada on it. I don't know.
Yeah, man.
I mean, that aside, there's still tons of examples of interaction in the 1840s. In the Irish potato famine, the Ottomans helped many of the Irish people out during the potato famine of the 1840s. The Ottoman Empire. They sent money, and they gave financial aid. I think they sent, but at the time, £1,000 in financial aid to Ireland to help them during the potato famine. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the Ottomans wanted to give them more, but Lord Cowley, who was a British ambassador to the Ottomans at the time, he didn't want it to be seen that a foreign power was giving more aid than the government itself at the time. So these are important aspects of history, isn't it? Which are not really, it's not known, it's not discussed, kind of hidden, you could say.
I always liked, reminded of the story of historically, like King John, who wanted to, I think for tactical, strategic reasons, embrace Islam so he can get help from the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, and I always wonder what that would have been like.
But I heard that that's not true. That
really,
he didn't
he didn't do it.
He didn't want to embrace, but he did want to try to get their support. That's what
the support. Yeah, so it was probably just but it wouldn't
have him wanted to embrace Islam. I don't think that's sounds like with the King offer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just read that article real quick. It's talking about about his. I think it's linked to what Abdul Haq was saying just before about trade. It was more to do for trade rather than anything else. Just to, even in that article, it mentions that. So
which one? The King offer one.
Yeah, the King offer one. Yeah. So
yeah. It's not. So was it denying that the coins actually even exist?
Yeah, basically what it's saying. I've just turned it off now. I'll have a look. I'll put some comments on there anyway. I'll share some of the. I'll cut and paste some of the stuff on there. But from what I've just had a quick look at it, it's not denying. Hold on.
Because what is a myth is the notion that he became Muslim. That's not true.
No, he didn't become Muslim. No, it's more. It was used. It says here, the unique gold coin of Offa, King of Mercia, is one of the most remarkable English coins of the Middle Ages. It imitates a gold dinar of the Caliph Al-Mansur, ruler of the Islamic Abbasid dynasty. Although the Arabic inscription is not copied perfectly, it is close enough that it's clear that the original form, which it was copied, was struck in the Islamic year 157 or 773 AD. It seems that the engraver had no understanding of the Arabic script. The name of and title of Offa Rex, King Offa, has been inserted upside down in relation to the Arabic inscription. Why the coin was made is not known for certain. It has been suggested that it was made as a gift for the Pope. It was recorded in Rome, in brackets, but it is unlikely that any Christian would have sent the Pope a coin with an inscription stating that there is no God but Allah alone, however badly the Arabic had been copied. It is more likely that it was designed for use in trade. Islamic gold dinars were the most important coinage in the Mediterranean at the time. Offa's coin looked enough like the original that it would be readily accepted in southern Europe, while at the same time his own name was clearly visible. That's what it says on that link on the article, basically.
So why have they put it? Why have they titled it "fake news" then?
I don't know.
Yeah, see, I don't because I'm not a fan of that term. It's been the way it's been bandied about a lot, isn't it, over the last 2 years, isn't it? Fake news, fake news. Where was fake news before? Where was fake news before when people were conjuring up all kinds of things to go to, to attack innocent civilians and go to war against this place and that place? Where was the notion of fake news then? It just like seems like that. Now everyone sort of jumps like, yeah, fake news. That's fake news. That's fake news. That's fake news.
All right, so let's get back to the
topic. It's sanctimonious, isn't it? The way it's been used, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Let's get back to the topic then. Yeah. So today we were gonna Isa, assalamu alaikum. How you doing, bro?
Assalamu alaikum, guys. Alhamdulillah.
Couldn't get enough, yeah?
Couldn't get enough, bro.
Isa, you must be shattered, bro.
Well, actually, normally we start at 10 o'clock, so I've had a good 2 hours, about 2.5 hours rest compared to when I normally start.
Alhamdulillah.
So, guys, live.ira.org. Donate now.
You mean supportidc.com?
It's gone.
All right, so
all right, I'm not doing that again.
Listen, we were talking yesterday, Abdul Haq, about the great replacement theory. Okay, we touched upon that yesterday. Now, just for the viewers of tonight, what is the great replacement theory? What does it mean, and where does it come from? And more importantly, how does it affect us today? Give us a summary of what that means, a good definition, and then give us some working examples of that.
The great replacement theory I think speaks for itself. I think the name is in the title. What it refers to is how it was devised by a French homosexual writer called Renaud Camus, who he's the one who devised this and articulated this quack theory, and it's a theory which posits that white Europeans, and he was talking about the French context. He was saying that how the white French peoples are gradually being replaced by Africans and Asians, and I think he was also emphasizing an Islamic aspect to as well. So that's the theory, essentially, that the white peoples of Europe are being gradually replaced by Black Africans, Black people, and Arabs. That's it, simple. So I could say it's a regurgitation of past sentiments or past. You know, see what I'm saying? As we touched upon yesterday, there's some parts of elements in Europe who are very uncomfortable with their own history. You see what I'm saying? Instead of embracing it and trying to understand it, they actually they view that as maybe as a time of weakness. Oh, we were, they reached they managed to get to the borders of France, and even within France, Montpellier. These people in this 8th century, and maybe in the psyche of a fanatic, this is something which to them is just the epitome of of subjugation to them. So I think this is why it's rearing it reared its ugly head again, a regurgitation of past uncomfortable for them, which is not necessarily subjugation, but for them, which would be examples of subjugation re-emerging again within the 21st century. And I think that's where that's a sort of summary of the theory. And it's become, there's aspects of it have been mainstreamed. Remember what we were discussing yesterday, how some of this narrative has been mainstreamed. That's become pervasive now. And this is an important thing to also mention. Abu Tayyib and brother Jamal and the other brothers, is why it's important for those people involved in dawah. Why? Because I've seen some of these individuals, some of these mainstream individuals who are invited to speak on TV shows, and they write these articles and they publish really expensive books, and they've got all of the publications, and they've got, even though they tried to make out, they will try to make out that they're sidelined, but they're in the media nearly all the time. What kind of sidelining is that, or marginalization is that? They're given ample opportunity to spout their rhetoric, more or less unchallenged. And a case in point for, as I was saying, for brothers who are involved in dawah, that some of these individuals, their narrative hasn't even been challenged by any Muslims. I've seen certain
what narrative, like which individuals are you talking about?
That's what we're getting to. We're going to get to this. So we often narratives like those people who feed into this, as we discussed yesterday. Remember, we talked about yesterday how over the last 20 years this narrative has been bubbling up, while everyone was taking their eyes off the ball, looking at what the Muslims were doing, and rightly so in some cases. We have to say that, yeah. But when people taking their eyes off the ball, looking everything what Muslims were doing, unbeknown, and all the while they wasn't aware of what was going on, and bubbling up under the surface with all of these other narratives. The narrative of, as we mentioned yesterday, the narrative of the Enlightenment fundamentalists. Who are the Enlightenment fundamentalists? Those people who say, we're being muzzled, we can't talk, we're not allowed to criticize the Muslims, there's no freedom of speech anymore. What? Can't criticize that's all we got from what.
That is so crazy. That is so
crazy.
All
we got for a good few years were just a constant battering in the tabloid press.
No, forget a few years. We're talking 19 years minimum, right?
Look what these people are doing. I think there's a collage as well. It's a collage which some brothers put together of all of the front page tabloid newspapers. Look what they're doing. Muslim plot to kill the Queen. Muslim plot to do this. Ramadan a ding dong. The halal meat being forced down our throats. And they're talking about that narrative is being marginalized, but there's no freedom of speech. They've got to be kidding me.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. It's so crazy.
This narrative
idea is so crazy. When people say to me, when those from the far right in particular, they say, "Oh yeah, we can't criticize Muslims without being called a racist." Yeah, no, they're two different things. Muslims have been criticized and put under the spotlight for nearly 20 years from the mainstream media. Well, forget mainstream media, from the mainstream politicians, right, all the way through to the mainstream media and through to the increase in the far right and legislation, which is, let's be honest about it, which was very specific at the beginning against Muslims. And you can't say that nobody can criticize Muslims when it's structurally allowed, institutionally allowed to criticize Muslims on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, flies.
And then the second aspect is, oh, well, without me being a racist. Well, I'm sorry, mate. If you're a racist, you're going to be called a racist, yeah? Don't try and hide your racism by pretending that you haven't got freedom of speech. This is the hilarious thing about this, is they think that their racism and this is the double standards. When a Muslim comes with something which is, even some of our speakers, they will come out with something which is against British values. They're seen as hate preachers, right? Peddling hate, radical speakers, and so on and so forth. Banned from universities, speaking at universities, and so on and so forth. But yet, when a racist wants to do something or a fascist wants to do something, oh yeah, you're muzzling my freedom of speech. Well, hold on a minute. That's a double standard now. You can't have it one way when it's against you, but then be okay with it when it's against somebody that you disagree with. Do you see my point? So, and there's so much disparity when it comes to these type of issues that we've got to, and you're absolutely right, the Muslims aren't challenging it enough. In fact, I'll tell you something else. While I'm on this little rant, I'll tell you something else. The Muslims are so pathetic sometimes that they'll be willing to throw their brothers under the bus instead of standing up for them and continuing with the program. And I'll give you a quick case in point. We invited Sheikh Abu Osama back in 2010 or 2011, something like that, to do a talk at the university on, guess what the topic was? To deal with extremism and terrorism, right? To refute extremism and terrorism. The university decided, no, he's a hate preacher. He's not allowed to be. They tried to ban our event, right? And most people, what they would have done was, now, you know what? Scrap the speaker. We want to keep going on with the event, right? Most Muslims would have done that. And most ISOC still do that. And I said, no, we're going to fight this. We're not going to take this line down. You can't dictate to us that this speaker is a hate preacher because you feel like he's a hate preacher, right? It's a very subjective term. And I said, just previous to that, they had a far right racist on campus speaking. Right. And I said, you can't have that double standard. So we said, okay, we're going to fight this. And what I did was we had a backup venue booked outside the university just in case they try to pull a fast one on the last minute. And it's exactly what they did. So we said, now we're going to stand by our guy. We're not going to throw him under the bus just because they said that they don't like him. So we still held the event. We had to move it to a nearby location. We ran the program. And at the beginning of the program, I started, because I was obviously chairing the event, I started off by saying, and guess what? The two guys, the prevent officers from the university campus were there. The security guys were there as well at our event off campus. So I clocked them and I said, what a shame it is for British freedom of speech that the so-called, the last bastion of free speech and free ideas has muzzled and stopped an event from taking place, which even the topic was for dealing with these issues, because of something that someone that they didn't agree with. And this is the point that we have to start thinking about as a community, how we deal with some of these issues without throwing our brothers under the bus at the same time and calling out these double standards, like you rightly mentioned.
I'm interested. How are they arriving at this conclusion that such a person is a hate preacher, and who are the people who are making this decision, and what are their sort of background in terms of to make that to give that conclusion?
Well, it was very clear when I spoke to them. It was very clear that they were going by certain legislation which was very ambiguous anyway in terms of the wording. Number two, it was a judgment call that they made based upon some YouTube clips and also the dispatches program, which he was cleared of as well, by the way. But they'd already made up their mind that.
Even I think West Midlands counter-terror police as well. They really disagreed with that poor documentary as well.
Of course they did. Of course they did. But that's the point, that there's so many issues going on, and this whole idea of the great replacement theory is something which needs to be addressed. And we
Right,
as
so-
a community, we need to wake up to this and understand
So-
that there's certain narratives being pushed that affects us as Muslims directly, and we've got to wake up to this.
So, but yeah, so let me get back to my train of thought then. So this is going to lead us to what I'm trying to get to. So this is a good background. So we can see that due to the mainstreaming of anti-Islamic sentiment, as you said, you've met people, and I've met them as well. They're totally unbeknown. They think that hasn't happened. But this shows the efficacy of the propaganda over the years. That because they've been pumped every day by the tabloid press what they're reading, look what these Muslims are doing. Look what they're at it again. Look, they want more demands again. So when you're bombarded with that 24/7 and unbeknown to them, you're just sucking it in. Of course, they're getting it from the mainstream press anyway, because the mainstream press is look at the rise of certain far right groups over the last few years in UK. They rose because they saw certain things being pushed in the media. You see what I'm saying? They saw people going to doing stupid publicity stunts. You see what I'm saying? Going to doing stupid publicity stunts, and that hyped them up as well. But they saw that bombarding the media, so the media does have a role.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
But this shows the efficacy of it. The efficacy of it. So so you've had the media playing its role, stirring things up, and then you've also had the Enlightenment fundamentalists. The Enlightenment fundamentalists, who are they? These are the ones who had over the years the Andrew Antonys, the David Aronoviches, the Christopher Hitchens of the world, and so forth, Sam Harris, etc. These kind of people who also push a narrative, who believe that Islam is against all the values of Western toleration, and it's the Muslims who are doing it, and they're the ones who are muzzling freedom of speech. You see. It wasn't necessarily these far right people who came with it first. It was other. This was something which was being articulated. That you could say these are the intelligentsia. That's what I was saying. It's important. These were the ones who applied, which we mentioned yesterday, mood music to this narrative. They're finding the background mood music, building up to it. Oh yeah, now they're quick to deny any role that they're having it. But this is the reality. Has happened. So we had the Enlightenment fundamentalists. Then you had also the Zionist and Eurabia Vimitude conspiracy theorists. These are like people who wrote books like, for example, we mentioned Melanie Phillips in her famous book Londonistan, which was quoted by a far right terrorist fanatic in his petty manifesto. Anders Behring Breivik. He referred to Melanie Phillips' book Londonistan in his manifesto. See what I'm saying? This is a book which has said the same things. Look at these Muslims; they want a shopping list of demands.
The idea that London has become an Islamic sort of city
enclave,
or an Islamic country of its own.
Enclave, isn't it?
Enclave, yeah, exactly. And then there was that big thing about, Muslim ghettos in Birmingham and Muslim ghettos, which are implementing Sharia law. Do you remember that big fiasco that came on the mainstream media? And some dude in America was quoting that or something like that, yeah? And it was so ridiculous that it was, you can't walk through these Muslim ghettos, otherwise you're going to get killed, or there's going to be Sharia law applied to you and stuff like that. How do they get away with this? Because the reason why I'm asking this question is, think about this, right? On some of these tabloid headlines, somebody did this experiment and they said, change the word Muslim where it says Muslim whatever or Islamic blah blah, right? Change that to black or Jewish. Straight away it'd be considered a racist headline, right? Straight away. But when it comes to Muslims, you can get away with so much in the mainstream press, in the mainstream media, even with mainstream politicians, by targeting Muslims. In fact, it'll probably get you more sales and more votes, as we've seen across Europe and America recently, and even with Boris Johnson's whole letterbox nonsense, yeah, and other things that he's come out with. That you replace this, the word to attack Muslims, it's fair game, basically. And the idea is, how do they justify it? Like you said, the mood music, the idea, this ideology of the great replacement theory, or they're against freedom, they're against our values. There's an invasion going on. They are, they're taking over the country. You see, they want to implement Sharia law, and and be make even Piers Morgan said it, make it like into Islamabad, right? He said it on Good Morning Britain once, right, when he was debating with Dilly. And Dilly was good when he challenged him. He said, what do you mean by making it into Islamabad? What do you mean by that? And he sort of tried to backtrack a little bit. But the point is that when you've got these type of ideologies at the back of their mind, or ideas at the back of their mind, it almost justifies them to attack Muslims. And this that populist agenda, isn't it? Basically, yeah. It's
because I will tell you, it's never all of what we've discussed and what we've been discussing about this mood music being provided. None of it was ever. I don't recall it ever being assessed in the media. I don't remember anyone sitting around like as we're trying to do today and to discuss to look at this. Look how the media's been doing. I don't recall seeing any of that. At all taking place. I didn't see any of that self-reflection at all with regards to the role of the media over the last 15 years and the stuff which the virulent rubbish that they just been spewing out. I haven't seen any assessment of that at all. So we have that on one hand, and we also have, as I said, the Zionist Eurabia dimitude conspiracy theorists, and this is mostly articulated by an Egyptian Jewish writer called Giselle Littman, and she uses the pen name Bat-Yor. She formulated this notion of dhimitude, where Muslims have a intrinsic agenda to subjugate non-Muslims to a state which is known as dhimitude, which is kind of like that's again similar to the sort of like paranoid delusions, but also she's not really an academic or specialized in history or Middle Eastern history, just a writer really. But her narrative over the last 20 years, particularly after the 9/11 years, her narrative was massive. In fact, the dhimitude we hear, that's why we hear some of the white supremacists. That's a term they use as well. Dhimitude, getting it from where? Bat-Yor and her writings with regards to it as well. And she tries to argue that Jews were, occupied. She remember she came from Egypt, so she's an Egyptian Jew. So she had a particular context and a particular situation she was in. So the circumstances there may not have been favorable, particularly after the Palestinian issue and so forth. So her family had to migrate to Israel. So maybe there's issues there which requires from her some self-reflection. But but it's well known by most historians, even even some of the historians who are not necessarily friends of Islam, such as Bernard Lewis, and he was who was a Jewish historian himself. They have noted how Jewish communities under Islam and the Islamic civilization, Islamic realm, that they thrived under the Muslim countries and the Muslim realm during those times. Remember, that was an epoch where Jews were being kicked out left, right, and center all over Europe. Pogroms here and there all over Europe. The Jews were regarded as being those people who tried to murder Jesus. So they were booted out from loads of places in most European countries. Where did they go? Which countries took them in with open arms?
The Muslim countries.
And with tolerance and toleration. It was the Muslim lands that they went to.
Of course.
Remember, even in the UK, there was an edict in 1290, which was that edict was that all Jews should should get out of England. It was in 1290. When were they allowed back in? They were only allowed back in by Oliver Cromwell in the 17th century, which is what was known as the Cromwellian Protectorate. And some people say he did it cynically. Oliver Cromwell did that cynically, just for sort of business and mercantile business and economic and mercantile considerations. And that's why he did it. It wasn't due to any notions of there being a shared Judeo-Christian heritage. And that's another important aspect. There's the Zionist Eurabia dhimitude conspiracy theorists. Like Melanie Phillips, she emphasizes this a lot in her book, Londonistan. She talks about how there is a Judeo-Christian heritage which Muslims do not have a share. That's the kind of narrative she puts out, which is interesting. So let's fast forward now. So remember, Londonistan was quoted by the right-wing white supremacist terrorist fanatic Anders Behring Breivik in his quasi-manifesto. So let's look at the white supremacist narrative now. Where's that leading? Are they saying that there's a shared Judeo-Christian heritage? No, they're saying the Jews will not replace us. So the people who fed into that narrative itself, now the magic has over as the saying is in Arabic, in qalaba sihr ala sahir, the magic overcame the magician.
The magician.
What's happened now is that these white supremacist fanatics now, they're not saying that we've got a shared Judeo-Christian heritage. The alt-right, are they saying that we've got a shared Judeo-Christian heritage?
Not at all.
No, they're saying that the Jews will not replace us, as we heard in Charlottesville.
Hmm.
As the white supremacists were saying with placards and screaming in Charlottesville, and as they have been saying. So the replacement theory now, after feeding into it for all of these years, the Eurabia and Zionist, the Michu conspiracy theorists, now it's come back upon them now. And now the white supremacists are not just saying that black and brown people are replacing us, they're also including Jews within that as well, saying the Jews will not replace us. See, this is the danger of this that this narrative has led to.
Yeah, of course. Jamal, we've got some comments there, bro. Let's go through some of the comments, inshallah.
Let's go through a few of these. Inshallah, we got Muhammad Shofi. Brothers, please make dua for my mum, please, to have some improvement. We would really appreciate it.
I'll give your mother shifa and cure her as soon as possible, inshallah.
I mean, David Healy, salam alaikum. Great show last night, brothers. Been looking forward to the conclusion all day. Alhamdulillah.
Alaikum salam. Our brother David from Bedford, right?
Inshallah. This brother Zegov, I wish I could pronounce your name properly, bro. I wish you'd type it so we can see how to pronounce it. The justification is that being a practicing Muslim is a choice, and being black or Jewish is not. I think that was in regards to the media.
That's a good point. But the premise still stays the same. It's still racism, regardless whether it's a choice or not. Whether you have a heritage, and the fact of the matter is, there's another argument to this as well. Even let's say if we don't accept that idea that being a Muslim, and it doesn't talk about practicing Muslim, it's all Muslims that it's generally related to, not practicing Muslim. It doesn't say practicing Muslims are blah blah blah. It's generic, right? So the point is that everybody knows the vast majority of Muslims are non-white, right, in this country. Everybody knows that. So the fact of the matter still remains that it is racism considered racism.
Yeah.
Can I just say something about this? It's an interesting point, because what I've noticed over the years is that there's a loophole which has been exploited here.
Yes.
By some of the far right fanatics, and they're well aware of it as well. It's a loophole, which is they know that they can't be castigated as being racist because easily the get out clause is no, it's not a race. That's the get out clause. That's the get out clause. So they're fully, and it's also the same for the tabloid press, who over the years are battering people with these foolish stories. Is that it's the get out? It's a loophole.
Yeah, but it just tells you they don't understand what the definition of racism is. That's what it tells you.
But even if it's not racist, it's still hate preaching, and it's still disseminating hate. So I'm saying. So regardless, okay, take out says no, it's not a race, but there's still preaching hate, which and leading and advocating violence, and that is and that's still something was totally unacceptable and should be condemned, and it's not as much. So sorry, do you want to take some more?
Any more comments, bro?
Okay, inshallah, we have Isam Amir. We Muslims need to educate ourselves and unite.
Don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Dawood, look again. There are powerful entities in America. There is an article by The Guardian funding Tommy Robinson. There's an article
That's another point. The link between Anders Breivik and this ideology is the same link between the New Zealand shooter and this ideology, and the same link between Tommy Robinson and this ideology. There's no difference between them. They're all motivated by the same theories and the same things that we've been talking about just now, the great replacement theory.
Yeah. Can I just mention a point as well?
Yeah.
It's actually what I was leading to, but many Muslims haven't done any response whatsoever to certain individuals. I'm not sure why that is. Abu Tay, maybe you could elaborate more on that as I make the point. But there are certain individuals, whether it's the Enlightenment fundamentalists, they'll have seen them challenged, but then there are other individuals who are also feeding into this narrative. They're feeding into the narrative in a big way. So they're not necessarily talking about the great replacement in as pronounced as that, But they're saying, what are they saying? They're talking about the Europe's impending and inevitable death is on the horizon. The destruction, doom,
The death
end
of European
the death of-
civilization.
the
yeah?
death of Europe, the death of Europe, doomsayers. But no Muslims are saying anything to those individuals who are saying that. The likes of your Douglas Murrays and so forth, who are saying this with a virulent, a virulent way, talking about Europe's impending death. So so someone's sitting there and he's hearing, you're getting bombarded with this narrative of someone saying that Europe is about to be destroyed, and Europe is tiptoeing into walking itself off a cliff, and Europe is on as at death's door. This is what kind of narrative is that? So what are you trying to say then? That obviously that's going to say to someone, isn't it? Someone sitting there listening to that, being bombarded with that narrative. They need to do something, needs to take up action. This is a dangerous narrative. This is a dangerous narrative. And furthermore, to the likes of Murray, is that his book, The Suicide of Europe, full of total inaccuracies in there anyway. He talks about, he looks at things like he looks at things like the reproduction factor, another key theme in the contemporary white supremacist narrative, which we touched upon yesterday, wasn't it? The reproduction factor. And then even on YouTube, there are certain white supremacists preachers, or in fact, let's look at that. Some of these white supremacists on YouTube and stuff like that, they don't call themselves white supremacists. What do they call themselves? Race realists. That's what they call themselves. Race realists. Interesting word, isn't it? What they're using to describe themselves. Race realists. And essentially it's white supremacist narrative, but they've repackaged it in order for it to be more palatable. And what they've called it? Race realism. So that's what they're talking about. And some of these individuals spouting, they're complete ignoramuses. I mean, you got one of these individuals is hiding, who talks from a bunker in Vietnam. And then you've got another, he doesn't even live in England anyway. Then you've got another cretin who cavorts with Thai ladyboys and these kind of things. How are these individuals supposed to provide any intellectual discussion to the debate?
Do you remember when Vinnie Jones because Vinnie Jones lives in the ex-footballer and actor, right? He lives in California. There's a big article that he was quoted on saying, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to move back to Britain because the immigrants have taken over. There's too much immigration. Football's, the Premier League's been diluted by too many foreign players." You remember that, yeah? There's a big article on it. And how ironic, how stupid. The man is an immigrant himself in another country, complaining about immigration in Britain, yeah? That's how ridiculous he is, yeah? It was so stupid. But it comes back to that point. The invasion of Britain he was making, and the invasion of Premier League with foreign players, yet he's sitting as an immigrant in a different country. My man's lost the plot, right?
Is even the woman who was basically doing this massive campaign about sending the immigrants back and stuff, and they basically found out that she was running the campaign from Spain. Like, she lives in Spain, yeah, and she was saying that these immigrants are coming and they're flooding our country and stuff. And someone said something like, "Do you even speak Spanish?" And she was like, "No." It was something crazy. I remember it was big.
Yeah.
That's actually an excellent point. Let's touch on that for a few minutes. This whole notion of these Brits who go to Spain and buy a lovely apartment, got a lovely villa in the Costa del Sol. that element of people, Jamal knows what I'm talking about, I'm sure. He's already heard that. But this is actually a very important point, because I actually saw there was a good piece by, I think, one of the news agencies. They did a good piece about British, and interesting. Look at the language again. I will tell you. Look at the language. When they have about the British people live in Spain, are they immigrants? No, expats. Bizarre. And so British expats who are in Spain, and they had a good piece upon them. But there was one honest English guy on there, and he was saying, "No, we're immigrants. We're immigrants." The same thing was with the people who are going from the parts of the European Union or wherever to England. We're also immigrants. He was actually honest. Good, fair point. He said he had justice, that man. He said, "No, we're immigrants as well." It's true. He said, "We live here. We don't speak the language." He said, "We don't speak Spanish." You think these people, when they go and living in the Costa del Sol or Marbella, do you think are they learning? Are they speaking fluent? But some have learned Spanish.
No, they're all foreigners. All the Spanish are foreigners, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And they, I think in parts, I think they even got British police in some parts of those areas as well. Even I think.
Wow.
So
Talk about integration, yeah.
so you see what I'm saying? See again, you see the flip side of it as well. Something again that they're these. So you got British immigrants living in Spain, having a right old knees up in Spain, and it's all hunky dory. There's no issue there, is there? So and as the brother mentioned, just shows the complete folly of the. You got someone who's talking about spouting off an anti-immigrant sentiment, and they've got their own feet up in the Costa del Sol somewhere.
Yeah, man. Any more comments, Jamal?
Yeah, we do. Mashallah. David Healy. Yeah, Bedford, bro.
Yeah, Brett, he's our boy from Bedford, bro. Mashallah.
He says also, I feel part of the problem in Britain is that we are brought up around a lot of casual racism, and this tones down the seriousness of comments like Boris Johnson's letterbox nonsense.
Yeah, man. It's just what's the articulate racism? That's what it is. And the whole Brexit scenario, the whole issue of Brexit has brought out people's racism and made it okay for them to be racist, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's done essentially.
It's led to ethnic nationalism. That's
There you go.
Ethnic nationalism. Yeah, that's
Of
definitely
course.
been on the rise with it.
No doubt. And when you've got comments from mainstream politicians who are normalizing racism, then of course you're going to get those who harbor those views are going to be more confident now to come out with their racism. And like we talked about earlier, forget about confidently being racist, but then it leads to radicalization, it leads to extremism, and it leads to violent extremism. That's the point. That's where we're going with, and it leads to terrorism. Let's be honest about it. Let's be straight up about it. All of this as a direct link between the way that the foundations have been set and the way that the end results are going to or have been and going to be.
And this is why some of the brothers say that it's good to describe like this whole narrative and racism as being like a kind of jahiliyyah, because people fight, as the Prophet said, whoever fights under the flag of party spirit and asabiyah and qawmiyah, and he dies upon that, fighting under that banner, famata mitatan jahiliyyah, then he's died the death of the pre-Islamic times of the jahiliyyah. You see what I'm saying? Because that's what it is. It's called rallying people around partisanship, party spirit, qawmiyah, nationalism, all of these things. You see what I'm saying? It's all jahiliyyah.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more comments, Jamal, before we wrap this show up?
We do, yeah. Muslim BB, how do you reply to someone who says, I'm not racist against Islam, Muslims, because because Islam isn't a race, which we touched on that earlier on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole topic in and of itself.
That's the loophole argument. That's the
loophole.
You dealt with that really well, because obviously you can still physically harm someone,
right?
They're Muslim, so that still that counts as something.
Yeah, but even I argue that it's still considered racism, though, and I've got a whole workship that I do on that, and we can do that in another session. Maybe we can talk about that a bit.
I agree. I actually do. That's why it's a loophole. I do agree that the main sentiment of it is actually a racism against largely, I'd say, against Asians in the UK. Definitely, I think that is the main crux of it. However, they can't say that. So then the loophole is, we're just going to attack the.
Well, the funny thing is, they do actually say that, because if you look at the social media, it comes out with it. It always slips, and nobody, even those who don't say it, they don't challenge it, right?
Yeah.
The point is, it's still definitely intrinsically linked with racism. But my argument is, it is racism, and there's a whole number of reasons why it still is, even though Islam is not a race. But it's still considered racism, because, like I mentioned yesterday, racism is a social and political construct. The definition of it is man-made. It changes as well. The meaning can change, so therefore it is still considered racism. And we can go through that another time, inshallah, because it's a whole topic in and of itself.
Inshallah. I think we've only got one more comment left by our brother Zegos Nozko. Probably not how you pronounce it. Tommy Robinson has nothing against Majid Nawaz. For example, their rhetoric is pointed against practicing Muslims, meaning people who are outwardly presenting as Muslim.
Yeah, man, no doubt. This is, by the way, you know who this is, Jamal? This is our brother Abdullah from Poland. That's who this is.
Mashallah. Assalamu alaikum. So how do you pronounce his name then? Because he comments a lot, mashallah. I want to be able to say his name properly. I mean, because I don't.
Gregor. I think it's Gregor. I think.
Yeah. So Jazakallah, beautiful.
Equivalent is Gregory, I guess.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
mashallah, beautiful comments from him and from everyone else as well, especially. So I'm going to call you Abdullah from now on. I see that name. Inshallah.
Nothing against Majid Nawaz, for example. That's true, because Majid Nawaz fits in with his assimilated understanding of what a Muslim should be or what an Asian should be, right? Dare I use the term coconut? But the rhetoric is pointed against practicing Muslims, meaning people who are outwardly presenting as Muslims. No doubt, that's true. That's very, very true. That's who the agenda is against, because they don't like the idea. Again, we talked about this in another session. The idea of integration is not the same understanding of what we have as integration. Integration meaning that you can positively contribute to your society without compromising your identity. Whereas their understanding of integration is assimilation in reality. That's what they mean by integration, meaning that you have to assimilate and be like, or be something that you're not, and compromise your identity to be something, to be like the host or whoever it is that you're assimilating to be like. So this is essentially, when they talk about integration, this is what they mean, to assimilate. Hence the whole thing, the stupid thing about the whole idea of adhering to British values means different things to different people. If you ask even from within the indigenous people, if I'm going to use that in quotation marks, you'll find that the upper class, middle classes have a completely different understanding of what British values is compared to the white working class. Completely different. They will have.
It's not monolithic. It's not monolithic. Yes.
Exactly. So the idea of British values is just so ambiguous, because you can include so many different things from that. Some people might even argue multiculturalism is British values.
We saw from Dilly Hussein's street survey that most British citizens don't even know what British values are, and the proof was in that. So the understanding is completely different. But you mentioned someone earlier on, which I won't mention any name, but it seems like people try to please the peers by hating what you are and hating on it regularly. I mean, obviously, I don't want to cause any controversy, but to be Muslim and to have complaints and calling the Deen archaic, calling Islam archaic, and all these sort of things, and it's a real shame to see and to hear things like that.
It's highly offensive.
I mean, following on from what Brother Jamal said, I know who you're alluding to,
yes.
And I know the individual very well indeed.
Okay.
Because he was at university with me, so I know
Right.
him very well indeed.
But you not find that though. It's
So I think with certain people,
yeah.
I think with some people, is that they have sort of looked on their lives with a regret, and what the certain things that they've done with regret.
Yeah.
And in order to relive the things which they missed out on, they have then opted for a narrative wherein they can not only reassert the things that they missed out on in the past, but also it can become very lucrative for them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the individual in question didn't really do particularly well in his studies. Was spending more time gallivanting here, there, and everywhere in order to beat over the heads everyone to accept HT narrative.
Yeah.
And what's happened now is that now we're getting beaten over the head to accept the new secular liberal narrative. So it's essentially the same sort of person, but just like the narrative has changed.
Yeah. We could just do without that, though, being, as I mentioned, being racist against yourself, and this sort of this self-hatred, but then also distancing yourself from it, and say
it's controversial. It's controversial and it's lucrative. And I think this is what's key. Is that it's more that we have to look at things. Maybe some people have looked at this as more of a business, a lucrative business enterprise than anything. And that's what has surpassed any kind of any sort of principles
But you don't think they believe it, bro? You don't think they believe it? Because I believe it. They believe it. I think.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Anyway, alhamdulillah, our brother's name is Gregory. Gregory or Abdullah. Mashallah.
It's Abdullah. It's our Abdullah, bro.
We'll put Abdullah, mashallah, but at least we know it's Gregory. Alhamdulillah. But I'd love to know how to pronounce it in the proper way, the Polish way, though. That's another story, though, inshallah, another time. But if he types it for me, I'd like to be able to.
You know, they say that there was I was reading something. They say that basically one of the best ways to make money, or one of the best businesses that you can have, is to like create a new religion, or like create like a it was written by the guy who made Scientology. He's actually got a book on it where he said make a religion and you would make a lot of money.
Well, yeah, and leading on from that is like, in fact, within the last, I could say, 18 years, if you wanted to make a lot of money, just write a book cussing Islam, or saying that you used to be a Muslim, or that you just hate Islam. That's what we've seen. Look, all the books would have come up: Ibn Waraq, Hirsi Ali, Ed Hussein, Irshad Manji. Alhamdulillah, I haven't purchased any of these books.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? They'll just and what they are is largely propaganda tracts in order to gain their own sort of fame, and again, it's also lucrative publishing contracts and so forth. It's all just for money.
Yeah, man.
And I think the evolution of that concept is basically finding new belief systems in certain belief systems, like a different form of Islam or a different form of Christianity. That's what it's evolving into now.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Anything else you want to add, Isa, to this conversation that we've had? You got anything else that you want to bring to the table?
Amazing, very nice. I really enjoyed that.
Your inferiority complex yet?
Everyone thinks I'm a revert. Everyone thinks I'm white.
Okay, Jamal, anything else that you want to add to the conversation, bro?
No, only that it's been amazing, mashallah. Just listening to Abdul Haq has just been really, it's been fantastic, you know, very informative, and you know, and I can see that the viewers have also, you know, they all concur, they all agree. It's been amazing, and hopefully, you know, we can hear more from you as well, inshallah. You know, a lot to learn, you know, quite a lot to learn, alhamdulillah. But yeah, it's been amazing. Jazakallah khair, bro.
Right. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Okay, let's wrap it up there then, inshallah. I don't think we've got any more comments or questions, do we, Jamal? Is that it?
I mean, brother Abdullah Gregory just said good luck. Probably meant good luck with pronouncing his name. I don't know. But
Vash brat. He knows what I mean, yeah?
Okay, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there, inshallah. So let's get your health and fitness advice, CC, bro.
I'll keep it very, very short today, bro, inshallah. It's just, you've seen a lot of people out there, you know, during this lockdown, and maybe they're using it as an excuse to get out, but a lot of people are out there doing the exercises. But there's many people who are not going out. So my advice is today is for those people who are not going anywhere. We've been speaking about doing your best to, you know, keep to a regular program. Today I was going to just say we need to have istiqamah, like steadfastness in what you're doing. So even if you're not feeling it, like I don't want to do any exercise today, you have to do something, inshallah, no matter what it is. Find an exercise that you can do a little bit of. And those of you who are a little bit more advanced, try to progress a little bit. So, you know, if you can do press-ups, rather than just going down and doing like 20 press-ups and maxing out, give yourself a target of maybe 100, which means that you'll continue until you get to that 100. So you're going to stop, you're going to start, you're going to stop, you're going to start. And at the end of it, you're going to feel really pumped and really good. But yeah, everyone just needs to be steadfast and make sure that whatever it is you're doing, just don't allow yourself to drop out and fall short. And also at the end of the lockdown, don't do what everyone else is going to do. Like, you know, when else do you see millions of people out on the street? It's only during the lockdown. So don't sort of think, okay, lockdown's over, that's it. Where's the food? And then put your feet up and, you know, maybe like get out of shape again. That's advice, inshallah.
Balloon.
Yeah, balloon. Yeah.
Balloon after lockdown. Lockdown balloons.
Yeah. That's it, alhamdulillah.
That was really good.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, brilliant, guys. Jazakumullah khair. We'll be back tomorrow. Who do we have tomorrow? We've got a brother from Nottingham, Haroon Holmes from Nottingham Islamic Center. And we've also got brother Waqas Ali, who's going to be with us as well. So we're going to talk about how to get involved in dawah, how to start dawah, how to support new Muslims. We're going to talk about all of that sort of stuff with those two brothers tomorrow, inshallah. We'll be back hopefully by midnight tomorrow night, inshallah. So make sure you stay tuned. Oh yeah, one last thing. Have you noticed, Jamal, we've got a sponsor for the show now, yeah?
I know.
Pizza and Co. If you want a Parmo,
Yes.
50% off. Just mention Fast FM. You're gonna get your 50% off, yeah? If you want pizza or Parmo,
They deliver to London.
you guys, West Road or City Centre, 50% off.
Will they deliver to London though by order?
Sorry?
Will they deliver to London? The Deliveroo
No,
driver.
you can order it and send it to my house, bro. I'll sort it out for you.
Inshallah. Congratulations with the sponsors anyway, alhamdulillah.
Feed a fasting person today from Pizza and Co. West Road.
All right. In fact, Abdul Haq, before I forget, you're going to be back with us next weekend, right? So we're going to continue some more of these discussions
Great.
weekend, inshallah. So, Jazakumullah khair, everybody. That's the end of the show for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.